Hi guys, my name is Roger, and I'm building a mid-engine supercar in the basement of my home. Let's take a look at what I've been working on this week.
Before I get started working this morning, I wanted to show you a couple of things. This is the mold I've been working on for the past week, getting it ready to use. You can see that it is, it's probably, I don't know, 99% of the way there. There's still a few little blemishes and spots. I don't know if you can pick them up on the camera, but maybe here and here. All of these spots on this upper end here will be trimmed off because I've extended this area to where it's longer than it needs to be, so I can have some area to come and trim and get an exact fit. So I'm not too concerned about those little places. There's a couple of other little scratches here, maybe down here in this area somewhere, that are so minor that I'm thinking the wax will actually fill those when I start coating this. I have to put 6 coats of wax on this mold today to get it ready. I have to get the clear coat or the gel coat sprayed this afternoon so I can do the vacuum infusion layup on this part tomorrow. I also need to start figuring out the templates, or making templates for the carbon fiber pieces to go inside exactly the right size so I can put the seams where I want them to be. I think I want to try to put the seams as close to the center of the radiuses as I can. That's going to be kind of difficult because the carbon fiber parts come up and across. You know, there's a few steps in this part, so that's going to take up some of the material. So judging exactly what size to make these templates or these patterns is going to be kind of a challenge. And here where this round area is raised all the way around, it's the same thing. I'll have to kind of try to measure and figure some offsets out and make patterns and do my offsets to compensate for the steps. This is going to be a big challenge for me, but we will try to figure it out as we go. And in the meantime, today, while I'm putting the 6 coats of wax on this mold, getting it ready, I'm going to be working on this. This is the start of the next mold, which will be the center console. And I've decided not to make the console in one big piece because I have found a picture on the internet of a console in a Koenigsegg car that I really like the look of, and I'm going to try to duplicate that look where I have some carbon fiber edges sticking up and an aluminum piece which will probably have black anodizing on it to match the interior. And I really like the way that you can see the top edges of this carbon fiber on both sides of the aluminum insert, and I want to try to duplicate something similar to this. Anyway, this mold here is wide enough for both sides of the center console. Once this part is made, I'll trim it down the center and make 2 parts out of it, and then I'll have a template or a pattern to use to trim to get the top shape correct to be what I want it to be. But this is about 1/3 of the mold. The other pieces here will be angled, have 2 angles. It'll be split down the center at 4 degrees, and then here on these lines at I think 4.5 degrees. But it's kind of a odd shaped mold, but I'll show you more of that later as I start cutting and making the pieces. But for now, I need to get to work and get this mold ready to use, and then hopefully we'll be making this part tomorrow. While my glue is drying here on a part, I wanted to show you what I'm doing here. These are the three pieces, or the three main pieces of the next mold I'm making. And these two pieces will go together on a 4-degree angle. So there's kind of like a tent or a TP peak at the top. And then they match up against these angles. Once these two pieces are glued together at an angle, this whole piece tilts down at an angle and matches up to that at 4.5 degrees. And that will make the console pieces the angles that I need, because the console comes down the center and then turns out and gets wider at the firewall. Because of these two angles that I need on these flat pieces, that creates an angle here. So that center angle is just to accommodate the other two angles. But I need to cut two supports to go under this to hold them at the correct 4 degrees while I'm gluing and setting everything up. And these are the lines here that I need to cut to, and it's hard to set up a saw to make those small cuts on those angles. So what I'm doing is I'm making something. I used to have one of these and I've lost it over the years. I've made one of these before to cut some parts for airplanes when I was building an airplane one time. But this piece has a little piece of wood here on the end. Maybe you can see it. It just fits in the channel here in the saw. So when the glue is dry, I'll run this through the saw. I've left it a little bit long and it'll cut it off perfectly flush with the blade. And then that way this edge, will always be a perfect cut. So what I'll do is I'll take some double-sided tape and tape this line here that I want the angle cut on perfectly along the edge of this. And that double-sided tape will hold it in place. Then I'll take it up here in the saw and drop it in this channel and run it through, and it'll cut right on that line and make perfect parts. And then you just remove the part remove the double-sided tape. It's a low-tack tape, so it comes right off. But I've done this in the past and it always makes perfect parts. It's an easy way to cut crazy angles like this. So right now I'm just waiting on this glue to dry so I can utilize this little fixture here. And once this glue is dry, we'll come back and I'll cut these parts and we can start assembling this mold. I wanted to show you this one more time in case my explanation of how it worked wasn't very good. But once the glue is dry here, I ran this fixture using the track back through the saw. Then the blade cut off the excess here. Now our fixture is dead perfect alignment with the edge of that blade. Then we take put a piece of double-sided tape in here, and then we tape it across this line and just line this line up absolutely perfect with the edge of this fixture. And then when you run it back through the saw, drop this here in this track and it holds everything in a perfect alignment. And when we run this fixture back through our saw, it'll cut that angle just dead perfect. And I don't know, this will help someone out in the future. I don't even know where I saw this, if I saw it on YouTube or someone told me how to do it, or maybe I figured it out on my own, I'm not sure. But this makes a really good fixture to cut crazy angles or small angles like this 2-degree angle and get a perfect cut every time. But hope this helps someone out. Well, that's it for today on this mold. I need to let these pieces dry, the glue joints dry thoroughly, and flip it over and glue the backside. I want to make sure that there's no cracks in between these three pieces where they come together for air to seep through. I need a good vacuum on this part. But you can kind of see the shape of it. It is bent here, has an angle, and that is in between the two pieces, and then it's bent here You see it better this way. That angle is for where the tunnel gets wider at the front of the car up to the firewall. The seats are here. The seats actually sit on top of this notch. This is where the 2-inch higher part is, where the seats are. This comes down to the floor of the car and goes forward. This shape here matches the firewall. And I need to CNC a part that goes in the back here that interacts with the mold that I'm waxing and getting ready to make tomorrow. So once I get this part CNC'd and attached to here, then I need to continue these flanges here all the way around, and then we can start finishing this mold. So I would say we're maybe 2/3 of the way done with it. And it's fairly simple. The only critical thing is these angles match the firewall. The step here matches the floor of the car, which all of this should match. And then this interacts here with the speaker center console in the rear, which will be CNC'd, so it should match. It's also long, so it can slide in and out and adjust. But I have my 6 coats of wax on this mold. It is ready to spray the gel coat on. And I have the heater in the garage, warming the garage up to temperature so I can spray this gel coat. And we are going to go spray that now, and then it'll be ready in the morning to start making the carbon fiber part for this. And we'll see how this goes. This one's really complicated, so I am not quite sure what I'm doing. I guess I'll have to figure it out as I go, and we'll see if I do a good job or not. But I'm going to go get busy spraying the gel coat. Well, here is a little update. This part is out of the mold and looks absolutely terrible. I don't know what exactly happened in some regards. Some things I know what happened, and others I'm just not quite sure. But the part has many issues, some of which are it didn't fill completely down this edge. So there's a lot of material here that doesn't have epoxy saturating the cloth. You can see it's just flexible cloth. I know what happened there. Another issue is it was stuck to the mold. You can still see some of the mold here. It was stuck all down through here and down both these sides pretty well. I've just scraped most of the MDF off of the part here just to get down to the carbon fiber to look at it. But I don't know why it's stuck to the mold. That's the first time I've had a problem with that. And I made this mold exactly the same as all the others. I waxed the mold 6 times before I used it, just like all of the others, and all of the other parts came out pretty easily. But this one was really stuck. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. There are some delaminating issues, but I think that's where I was flexing the part, bending it so badly to get it to come out of the mold. It was just cracking the gel coat on the top surface. The other places, like here, once I removed the wood, and over here on the side, they look pretty normal. They still have wax all over them, but that'll clean off and polish up pretty nicely. Here's the mold. I was hoping to possibly reuse this mold if this part failed, but this mold is destroyed. It's in pieces. This is one piece, the end, and you can see where all it was stuck going down through here. And I'm kind of baffled, but I'm going to have to come up with a different game plan for this part. I don't want to redo it exactly the same way and have this issue again. It took me 2 weeks to make this mold and this part, and it was a lot of work. So I'm thinking, while I'm trying to come up with a better game plan on this part, I'm going to go ahead and finish this mold. This mold will make 2 parts. This is a fairly simple mold and part to make. So I believe I'm going to go ahead and finish this mold and make this part, or these parts, first, and then come back to this one. And while I'm coming up with a better game plan, I have an idea. I may split the part here in half and make all of this lower section here in one mold and then the upper section in another mold, and then join them back together somewhere along this line somehow. Either bolt them together or glue them together, or something that looks nice. I'm just not quite sure yet. It's even possible, if this part doesn't turn out absolutely flawless to where I can use it bare carbon fiber, that I may cover it with something like leather or Alcantara or something like that. Just not quite sure yet, but I have options if I can't get a perfect part. And it is fairly complicated. So the only good thing from this is where I did my part seams, I seamed it down this edge here. I laid one solid part coming down all the way down to here, and I seamed the sides, seamed it here, and this top is all one piece, and then both sides are all single pieces. But there's a carbon fiber line here, all around here on this radius going down, and where I've cleaned it off well enough to look down and see the pattern, it looks like the overlaps and the lines or the seams on this part look fairly nice. I would have been happy with them. So I guess that is one good thing out of this disastrous part, but kind of heartbreaking to work on something for 2 weeks and it turned out so badly. But anyway, I'm going to get busy here on this mold. I've got a few little things I need to trim on it to make everything even up, and then I need to get busy on the CNC machine to cut a piece that attaches here on this end. It has a little complex shape on it to interact with this part here. It goes inside of this, so it's a little bit narrower, and it has some draft angles on it, which this part doesn't. And I'll CNC that and attach it, and then we can finish this mold up and try to make these parts. But let me get busy working on those things, and I'll check back with you soon. So I wanted to show you this before I end up this week's video, and show you where this part that looks horrible fits in the car and what it's supposed to look like. And you can get a good idea here. You get a little bit closer. Got the windshield in the car, so it's kind of hard to see. But this is where this part would fit and kind of what it would look like once it's finished. Now this part, of course, we're not going to use, and I think for sure after doing some experimenting, I'm going to break this into 2 separate pieces and mold them separately and then reattach them afterwards. I believe that'll make it a lot easier to make the next try. But you can kind of get an idea of where this is going to sit and kind of what it'll look like. And it'll bolt down through here to this back firewall and across the top here also. So it'll be securely fastened in the car. That's kind of what it looks like. I have the end here of this mold. It has some contour shape to it. It is on the CNC machine cutting right now, so once that is finished I can attach it and then finish up with the sides coming down and attach to that CNC routed piece. And then we'll have this mold ready to start finishing, and hopefully pull some good parts off of this mold for our center console. And if we're lucky, we'll get some nice parts off of this mold. Since it's not too complicated, I have high hopes that these parts will look better than the one that we just made. But I guess that's it for this week's video. We're going to end it on having 2 wasted weeks and a failed part, but that's just what happens when you're trying to learn new things. This complicated part kicked our butt, and the last 2 weeks were kind of wasted other than just a learning experience. But we'll move on, make some different parts, and then we'll try this one again in 2 pieces here in the next couple of weeks, and hopefully it'll have a much better outcome. But that's it for this week's video, and I'll see you guys again in 2 weeks.